welcome to Threat Intelligence. Today we have Adam Huenke with us from Authenticate. He is an open source intelligence trainer, and we're going to get into speaking with him in a bit. Just to introduce myself, I'm Rachel Cronenfeld, and I'm a product manager here at LifeRaft, and I'll be your host for today. So, Adam, tell me a bit about why open source intelligence. How did you get into this?
Yeah, Rachel, it's a pleasure to talk to you today. So open source intelligence is kind of the stepping stone I had to go from when I started my career many years ago. I started out as an all-source intelligence analyst with the Marine Corps back in 2002, did that for a few years, about 9 years, and got out in 2011. And natural recourse of going through this the transition from the military to the civilian side was, well, where do I need to go from here? And I started doing some intelligence work, showing people how to do cell phone type stuff and digital forensics, which was nice and cool, but I needed a better career than that. I was working on contracts for a company. And so I switched over to cybersecurity, and I have the background in intelligence. Helping with open source is something you do on a daily basis when you get into cyber threat intelligence and cybersecurity, because that's the only source of data we have. It's not like in the military where I've got closed sources and secure sources that are giving me details and information on either an unclassified or classified side. So having an understanding of how to do open source research is really important. And I enjoy going and doing OSINT, and I enjoy talking about OSINT, talking about the challenges that we have in cybersecurity and in OSINT fields. So that's where it was a natural career progression, basically, for me to get into open source intelligence. It's not that much of a leap from an intelligence analyst to open source intelligence analyst.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always good to follow what you enjoy doing, makes the day-to-day better. So how specifically did you get into this career as a trainer now at Authentic?
So I've done some training in the past, and being in the military, we're always training. We're always doing stuff, whether I'm training somebody or being trained by somebody. I don't have any formal training to be a trainer per se, but I enjoy training people. I enjoy seeing that, oh, I got it moment when they do something. I did that with my first career out of the military, teaching digital forensics stuff, hunting and tracking, Wi-Fi hunting and tracking, those types of things. And seeing that, light bulb come on basically moment of, oh, this makes sense, is a great satisfaction. And so once I moved back up to where I am now in Ohio, I was a cyber threat intelligence analyst for a couple of years. And while I enjoyed doing cyber threat intelligence work, I missed that training aspect, right? That giving them the understanding, and then getting to talk to people like yourself and to try and help change the industry for the better when we talk about training and understanding what we need to move forward in the cybersecurity realm.
For sure. Educating others is very rewarding. I agree, having done some training myself in the past. So speaking of common misconceptions about you saying like the light bulb moment went off when you first initially teach somebody. What is a common, light bulb moment where somebody thinks one thing, but it's actually another, and then how do you, go about addressing that?
You've got to go. So for me, it's getting down to base understanding level for them, right? I follow the KISS method, or getting it down to the easiest definable moment for somebody, and the easiest way for them to understand it, right? Whenever you're training people, you're going to have super smart individuals, and you're going to have the not so smart individuals for both spectrums, right? A myriad of levels of understanding of the knowledge that you're trying to impart. Whether they have little knowledge of the internet, but they're on the internet all the time doing this stuff. So if you tell them how it works and how things go, you get that moment of they understand what's going on. And again, that's the hard part, is finding that lowest common denominator that speaks to everybody, right? As a trainer, it's what you have to do. You have to be able to find what makes sense to them. I'll give you a prime example. I was teaching somebody how to do direction finding. And, if you don't understand what direction finding is, it's just you're trying to find a radio signal with a device. Plain and simple and easy, right? Well, I'm training this guy, and he's like, I don't get it. And I'm like, hold on, you're a pilot, right? And he goes, yeah, I'm a pilot. I go, think of this as using your auto direction finder. I have experience as a pilot. I am one myself, or at least was. I still have a license, but I haven't done it for years. But when you break it down to that lowest point, he goes, oh, this makes sense. All I'm doing is tuning to this frequency and then watching this drop. I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh, and the light bulb came on. He understood what we were trying to accomplish, and all in all, he got the idea behind it and was able to do what we needed to do for the training.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's great. When you are able to take somebody from not understanding to understanding. What about somebody that thinks that they understand, but what they think something is not actually the case, like a common misconception? For example, like I know for me there's a lot of misconceptions around what the dark web is and things that are available on the dark web. So can you get into some of those stories that you have?
You've got to, with that, right? If we want to go to the dark web and talk about the misconceptions, like, oh, it's all bad, or oh, you're going to get, things are real terrible there, which there are some terrible things on there, but it really comes to understanding the history of what you're trying to teach, right? So the dark web initially started out as a great idea for U.S. intelligence persons to communicate in censored countries. And if you don't understand the history behind that, you don't understand that, yes, there's still good things happening on the dark web. It's a privacy place. It's a way to be anonymous and do, that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, all they hear about is, oh, well, it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. So you've got to it goes back to, you just need education. We need education on what things are and why it's important, I guess, is what I should have answered the first time. So,
Yep, that makes total sense. Okay, moving on to a more sensitive topic, budgets. Right now, people are cutting personnel, they're cutting funding going toward training, they're cutting funding going toward tools. So specifically going into the topic of training, since you're a trainer, what would you tell, a manager or leader in the security space about, like, how would you justify their spending on training?
I think continuing education is important, and that's what training really is continuing your education and making sure you're up to date with the most recent things that are happening. As the tech world is changing, exponentially day by day, we've got to spend money on training. And I get it, there's expensive things out there, but there's also free trainings out there and other ways to leverage that stuff. We all know SANS classes are expensive. They're $7 or $8 grand a person, right? Like, I get it. They're giving you great training. They're giving you a certificate. They're guaranteeing that you're going to pass. Like, I get it. But on the flip side, there's other organizations out there that will help you. One, for myself, I'm a veteran of the military. There's an organization out there that charged me $5 to do a Security Plus boot camp. They had sponsors and it was great. And I learned a lot, and I got the certification afterwards. So I think these leaders and these, organizations, what they need to do is start searching around for those other alternatives that are just as good, if not maybe better than some of the stuff that's out there. There's always training available out there, whether it's going to cost you $500 or $10,000. The other thing to think about too is you have security vendors, any of your vendors that you buy stuff from. See if if there's training included in the purchase of their product. Our product at Authenticate, we offer training involved with it. It doesn't cost you anything extra to talk to me and discuss some things, and maybe that discussion is, hey, I'm trying to write a policy. Is this right? And sometimes you need someone to just tell you, yeah, you're on the right track. You're not losing your mind. Keep doing what you're doing. And that happens, right? Other times it's, okay, let's discuss some things you need to think about to build for your organization to get better. And so they really need to focus on providing, I get it. Everybody's cutting everywhere. I've seen it on the LinkedIn where this person gets laid off and this gets laid off, and budgets at the government level are going down and budgets at companies are going down. But at the same time, you need still to spend money on training. Otherwise, you're opening yourself up to security risks. You're opening yourself up to not being current with what's happening in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So free training, sometimes, you hear the word free, sometimes it could devalue what people's thoughts are on the training. But I think, the open source intelligence community does like to give back a lot and train each other. It's very much that type of community. So I think, like you said, there's plenty of free training out there. Just need to do a little bit of research to see, what ones are reputable or not. Anything you want to share with the audience that you can think of that would be a good, reputable, free training or website that people can go to try and find training?
Um, I've done some digging, but not. I haven't found a whole lot of free stuff. Sadly, there's a lot of YouTube creators out there giving away information and talking you through certain things. So YouTube isn't a bad way to look at it. Yes, you're giving them views, which gives them money from ad revenue, whatever it may be. There's always that type of stuff. There's a couple of cheaper certificates out there, like GAIC. I think has some good stuff on there from a cheaper aspect. It's not $7,000. It's like $500 or $600 or less. I think Michael Basil still has a training course out there. That's a couple $100. And again, I view Michael Basil, if no one knows who he is, I view him as the epitome of open source intelligence research. He is the man that when it comes to mind of conducting OSINT investigations and OSINT research. So really, you just got to do your due diligence and do the research out there. And I think that's the problem. You get managers or you get leaders who go, oh, well, the best out there is SANS. Well, yes, SANS is great, but do you have the budget for it? And if you don't have the budget for it, don't try and push it through knowing it's going to get kicked back, right? Find an alternative, right? Have more than one option, I guess is where I'm going with that.
Right. And if there's any analysts or investigators that are listening on this call, the more you can make that case to your leadership that you did the research and you've done your due diligence, I'm sure that will only help you out to be able to take that training. So switching gears and moving on to compliance now. So does it change anything when there's a mandate or requirement to do a particular training? How does that change how leadership feels about it then?
It puts more emphasis on the need for it, I would think, and it also gives them some ground to stand on when it comes to getting that training accomplished, right? Compliance is always going to force you to do certain things. I used to work in the banking business and banking industry as a cyber threat analyst. It requires me. There are a lot of things I had to do that were requirements for those regulations and the compliance aspect of it. So I had to do certain things. I had to take vacation every year. Didn't have a choice. Even though I only got 30 days of vacation, I had to take a week of vacation, a straight 5 days of vacation, according to the banking industry. I didn't have a choice. And compliance makes us follow these rules. And they're good rules to follow. I just think sometimes at one point in time, eventually soon, we're going to over compliance everything. You're going to make everybody have to comply with all these standards and rules. And it may get to the point where that's all you're worrying about as an analyst instead of doing your job. Am I compliant with regards to this rule? Am I doing this right? Do I have security? And again, I get it. We need compliance, but how much compliance do we really need? If it stops me as an analyst from doing my job, I guess you could say, well, that's the manager's role to make sure they're compliant, but he's got other things he's doing, right? So it just compounds the issue, I think, when it comes to compliance. Again, I'm not against it. I'm just saying we need to be careful how much we institute from a compliance standpoint.
Yeah. And when I hear compliance, I think about like checkbox. Like you're doing what you have to, you're doing the bare minimum just to meet those requirements. But sometimes, it is challenging. There is that gray area, like you said, where, they're trying to figure out, how they're going to be compliant. And that takes up a lot of time in their day. Like you said, one of the things that a lot of people are talking about right now is SB 553, a California law that just passed where state workers are essentially required to now put together a plan for workplace violence prevention. And
Mm-hmm.
there's all these different details and things that they need to do in order to meet that compliance. It's coming in July. It's right around the corner, and it's probably going to spread, out to other states as a result. So that's an example of, it's coming pretty quickly. Everyone knows it has to be done. And now everybody's probably, scrambling in their day to try and figure out what to do about that. So I definitely hear you there where it's like you're focusing more time on that sometimes than you are, in the day to day.
Well, you brought up a good point that I think we want to hit on is you said the bare minimum. These are our requirements, and this is the bare minimum. So now, what you may have happened, if we get compliance in the cyber realm, is someone's just going to do the bare minimum work. They're not going to go above and beyond and look deeper for that, right? So you get analysts stuck in a rut, and then they get complacent. Things happen. The next thing you know, a breach will happen at the company, and they're like, well, I was doing what you told me to do. These are my requirements from a bare minimum standpoint to be compliant, right? Is that the right answer? As employees and I look at myself as an analyst. If I get into something deep, I'm going to keep going until I have an answer. At least you'll get most of the answer, and I can tell you this is what I think happened. Mm-hmm. But if you just tell me, yeah, go to here and stop, okay, cool. You're going to pay me X number of dollars a year to just go to a certain point and stop. Cool. I'll just plug away, do whatever you tell me to do, and not dig deeper and not look into it further. So you're now setting maybe the maximum requirement, not a minimum requirement, but a maximum requirement necessary to be compliant. Is that the right answer? I don't think so. I don't know. I'm not anybody special, but I don't think that's the right answer. I think we need to do better for people. If you're working at a company, you need to do better for your customers and better for the people that you're trying to help.
Yes. And worse answer might be, to just deny, say that you didn't know that you had to do a certain thing. So talking about plausible deniability, what are your thoughts on that?
It happens all the time. It happens every day. And I don't agree with it. I think denying that you knew something and that you're responsible for something is a wrong answer. You're putting the blame on somebody else. So whether it's a leader going, well, no one told us so we don't know what's going on, but the analyst down the line told his manager just didn't tell the manager above that, or manager, it didn't get up the chain. Whose fault is it? It's not the analyst's fault. He's doing his job. It's the leadership's fault on not understanding that there's data that can be consumed. And we're here talking about intelligence and data being consumed that can help drive decision makers. And that's what intelligence is providing the right data at the right time, or not in the right time, in a short amount of time, or time necessary to make a decision based upon what that data tells you. And so does deniable plausibility happen, or people deny that they know stuff? Oh yeah, I'm sure it happens all the time. I think it's the wrong answer. I think it's a cop-out. It's a way to shift the blame away from those leaders and put it down on somebody lower than them, and potentially that person may lose his job because he didn't know he was supposed to tell them.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. Ultimately, that leadership level position is going to be responsible for knowing and making sure that they're compliant with whatever they need. But I have seen personally, like, things fall onto the team below them, the analyst or the investigator that's doing the work. And when they say they didn't know, they genuinely mean it. They did not know, because things were not, necessarily communicated down the train properly. So, that just is a whole other conversation about, communication and keeping everybody informed, so that everyone can be compliant and, know what they need to do. So, all right, let's change the topic. We'll leave that there. So, automation.
Oh.
This is the other hot topic, not going away either. More and more automation being implemented in open source intelligence, more training coming out on how to use artificial intelligence and other various automation techniques to help with your work. So just general thoughts, how do you see this as it is today? Any precautions? How do you see it happening in the future? Let's just talk that out.
So I think that automation at certain points of the product and in the process are a good thing, right? If I'm a SOC analyst and I've got a computer that needs to be re-imaged, if I can set it to be done automatically without me having to review anything, great. Give me the data so I can go figure out why it happened. Maybe yes, because I can't. I can trust what the computer tells me, but I also want to verify that information. And again, at the end of the day, automating certain aspects of a job are important, I think. I just feel like there still has to be a human element inside of automation, of AI or automation. If we're talking truly about artificial intelligence, there's got to be a human element, because here's my rub. Here's my problem. I don't believe that you can program out bias from an artificial intelligence perspective. there's always going to be a bias, whether it's unconscious or conscious. And as analysts, we're taught to try and look for those things, which is why I always have someone review my work when I'm giving an analytical review or comment, because I'm not perfect. I can try and remove as much bias as possible, but it's never going to happen. And I think that's an issue with AI. I don't know who wrote the code. I don't know who's helping this AI tool become an AI tool and learn better. So I can't tell it what, I can't decide where I feel on that, because I need to know where its biases are. And I think that's the overarching issue, I think, is we still need to have a human hand on that wheel, right, or on the controls, saying, okay, cool, we're going to use artificial intelligence and automation to make the processes better. But there's still that human watching over, right? I think if you told me, hey, I've got a threat intelligence platform that's going to do all the analysis for you, you just plug in all your search criteria, do everything, get it all formatted and ready to go, and it's even going to write your analyst comments, I'd say, time out, we have a problem, because I need that human element to review that analyst comment.
Yeah, it's not autopilot. Autopilot's pretty scary, but Copilot, where there's a human element to it still, a little less scary, interested in maybe how it's going to speed up your day. Can you give me an example of Copilot today? Like how is an open source intelligence analyst using their human touch in combination with AI at the same time to help make things better?
So I've used ChatGPT sparingly, but I would say not only would I put something into ChatGPT to have it help me write something or give me an answer on something, but I'd also go then and do my own research to ensure that ChatGPT is giving me that answer. AI is not something I use that often. Like I said, I'm an old school OSINT guy. I'm just going to do it myself. But could something like ChatGPT or any other product out there, LiveRaft, anything else like that, help me in my day-to-day job? You're right. I just know that I'm still going to have to go do other research and make sure I've got the right answer, right? And that's the analytical mindset that I have, or the analytical mind that I've learned to develop, where I never stop looking for the information until I know I've got I know I've got an answer that makes sense and is multi-sourced, right? As an analyst, we can't go off of one source. We got to have more. We got to have at least. Some people say 2 sources is fine. I say at least 5 or 6 sources is the better answer. The more sources I have that back up what is being said and what my analyst comments state, the better off we're going to be. And so I think that's how you have to leverage it. Yes, use AI and use stuff like that to help you find data, but ensure that it's giving you the right results.
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of that. Always at least 2 sources, like you said, probably more. So while ChatGPT could be maybe some leads and open up your thought process, yeah, definitely need to go out and do more research.
Yeah, and I think there are people who are using it as just a single source answer, and I don't believe that that's the right way.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to open source intelligence work or intelligence work in general, I will say any type of intelligence, you should be mindful about that.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So we have some lightning round questions. For these are going to be a little bit more fun. So no more talks about compliance or budget.
Oh, yeah.
So what is your favorite free OSINT tool?
So I had a thought about this, and I've been thinking about it, and my answer honestly would be Michael Basil's intelligence website that he has that gives you access to his search parameters that he's built. Not trying to plug his page, but and plug him in general, but he is, in my opinion, again, the epitome of an OSINT intelligence analyst, the guy who started it all with his books on what to look for and where to go and how to do these things when the internet started to now, and how he talks through what's going on with all these social media companies, which is what everybody's doing these days. His tool allows you to search all those things. It's back up and running again. It was shut down for a lot of years, but it's just a great tool that's free to use and gives you some ideas of things to think about when searching. I think that in itself, it doesn't cost you anything. It's great. It's on it's on his website, and again, it helps you just find the information somewhat easier, a little more streamlined.
there's a lot on his website, and I actually have his book right behind me. I don't know if you can see it. It
I
might
can see it.
be cut off. Yeah, so he's right behind me, and I've definitely been on that site multiple times. And for anyone new that's listening, if you're just getting started, agreed, great space to start as you're going to get trained and figure out some best resources you could keep in your pocket.
I would also say spend money on his book. I hate to say it, both books, whether it's the privacy one, how to remove yourself from the internet so you understand what people are doing, and also the intelligence one, which I think is what you have behind you. It, there's so much good information in there that I go and reference from time to time, just to make sure I'm doing the right thing and I'm giving the right answers for my customers and for people that ask me questions.
I love those two different mindsets where you could be focused on keeping somebody off of the internet and taking them out of the internet. At the same time, you're trying to focus on finding everything about somebody on the internet. So if you have, both sides, I think that only makes you a more powerful analyst.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So what is a commonly held belief in the open source intelligence community that you passionately disagree with?
That there's a step-by-step process for everything. What I've been seeing lately, it's not, it's been recent in the last year or so, and people asking, give me a step-by-step methodology to find an email address and who owns it. And I'm like, that's not how it works. Intelligence analysis and if you give someone a step-by-step process, you're doing a disservice to that analyst, and you're taking away that artistic ability or that creative ability for them to use their artistic mindset or their creative mindset to think outside the box and find an answer. And what I mean, and it's even more simplistic than that. Of if I tell you go to this website, plug in the email address, if it gives you results, look on those results. If it doesn't give you results, it doesn't exist. You're going to stop there. There's other ways to find the data. There's other things to go look at. There's other ways to to get your answer. You can't just go step 1 is this, step 2 is this, step 3 is this. If you hit step 3 and you don't find a result, investigation over, go back to step 1. Like that's not how analysis works. It's not how OSINT should work. And I think there's a lot of people out there asking for that because they came over from a different side of the world, of a different side of the cyber community, whether that be the risk organization, or they come from IT where they're used to, step 1 is this, step, and I get it. But you've got to be able to open your mind a little bit and think outside the box, I think, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's concerning when, it's something like search here. If you don't find anything, that's it, especially in the sensitive situations that many of our listeners right now deal with on a day-to-day, where there could be actually a threat to somebody's life, and you followed the instructions, you did these searches, you didn't find anything, but yet there was all these other ways to find relevant information on that person that made a threat, where at that case it could have impacted the situation on someone's actual life. So in dealing with sensitive situations, I agree, it's a little concerning when it's like this is the de facto way, when there is so much creative thinking and other ways involved. Maybe a good middle ground is focusing, reshifting to common workflows that you might use just for a reference point, where if you're stuck, you might
Yeah.
want to reference one of those common workflows to make sure that you didn't actually overlook anything or not think about something, because we are only all human, right?
Mm-hmm.
So having things written down sometimes, especially if you're having like a clouded day and maybe you're just not thinking straight, like maybe they'll help in those cases a little bit.
I think it also goes back to what we're teaching people. And again, as I'm a formally trained intelligence analyst from the military. And when I was taught, they're like, okay, this is the intel cycle. Step 1 is this. Step 2 is this. So yes, it's in a giant circle, and you can go look it up on any website right now and look up a picture of the intel cycle. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is it's taught in a linear fashion. It's not talked about that the fact that step 1, which is planning and decision making and understanding your requirements, is a continuous updating process. Step 2, and collection is always going on. You can't stop collecting data. and as you go through the steps, understand that yes, while we talk about step 1, step 2, step 3, they really are circular and they should always be happening. Not necessarily the analysis and dissemination piece, but if you get, collection and analysis should be an analyzing of that collection and just, getting rid of, the separating the wheat from the chaff, right? That type of conversation. You got to just look at it as it's not, yes, we teach it as step by step, but some of these processes are constantly being done because if you're not, you're going to be behind the power curve. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. And it's a great reminder to get people out of the linear mode, get people out of thinking and within the box. And speaking of that, what advice would you give to an analyst to beef up their OSINT skills? So to how to break them out of that linear box type mode.
Always try to learn something. Always learn something new every day. When I was doing CTI and even today when I do stuff, I look for something new to learn every day. Whether it's I learn about a new piece of, when I was doing CTI, it was more like learning about a new vulnerability and how it impacted us, or learning more about the network itself so I knew how to look for stuff that would impact us. Today, with being a trainer, it's more like, what are the new trends, right? I keep talking to people about dark web and everything like that, but then I hear rumors that this dark net's going bye-bye and away, and everybody then is moving over to these two open net systems, for the future, and moving off of the dark web and, overall to talk about things, right? You've got to keep your ear to the ground and keep up to date on what's going on in the world and not just get stuck in your little world that you have, right? I've used this for very, very, very many, many years. I had a former captain in the Marine Corps who said this and goes, nature abhors a vacuum. And so does, at the time we were in Iraq, he's like, nature abhors a vacuum, and so do insurgents. The same thing goes for intelligence and for knowledge and understanding. If you keep yourself in this vacuumed whole space and you don't see what's going on around the world, how do you keep up? And how do you stay active in OSINT? How do you keep up with that? And I had that happen to me recently. No, not recently, last year. I did I did some help on a thing called Skull Games, which is counter human trafficking. And I was so rusty. I spent 3 hours searching for the wrong name of a person because I forgot a letter. And I spent 3 hours looking for them, right? I made a simple human error mistake. That's because I was so rusty at it, because I spent so much time training. So if you're not keeping up with these skills, you're gonna have these problems, right? Like, I guess that's the easiest way to say it, is just try and keep practicing, keep learning something new. There's always something new to learn and something to look at, and keep your ear to the ground with what's happening in the community. Again, as I mentioned before, cyberspace and cyber technology is expanding at an exponential pace. You got to keep up.
Yeah. And that's advice I'm sure many people would agree with. And even just looking at the job ads that are out in the market right now, I feel like every single job ad says something to the effect of, you have to keep up with changing times, you have to keep abreast with changes in tools and all those things. So I think that is recognized. It's like, you have to keep up. You can't walk into a room and not know what happened in breaking news today, even though you are trying to focus on your day to day. So it sounds like you clearly keep your ear to the ground, and you, even if you veer off sometimes and have a reminder like you just shared, most of the time you are thinking and forward and about trends that are coming in the future. So aside from the ones you named now, what are some other predictions that you have for the open source intelligence space? What's that going to look like, we'll say, in the next year?
Over the next year, I think we're going to see open source intelligence and cyber threat intelligence, and whatever you want to call it, expand at companies. I've seen it over the last couple of years where there's more roles for these things. I think what we need to also understand, and you mentioned it just briefly ago about job descriptions, is that quit trying to find the unicorn. I think what needs to happen is you need to understand and look at it from the military perspective of how they build their teams in the intelligence community, that you need to start thinking about specialized training. So whether that be the military does it simply and easily with the Marine. Like, I'll give you an example with the Marine Corps. Like we have imagery analysts, and we have SIGINT analysts, and we have all source analysts, and then you've got that one all source analyst who's great at this, or who can write reports all day, right? Start building and looking at your teams that way. Don't just hire the unicorn, or don't try and find the unicorn, because I hate to say it, they don't exist. I don't know anybody who's got SEC plus CISSP plus 5 years of actual experience and a 4-year bachelor's degree for an entry-level position. Like, I've seen those job applications, and it drives me insane, right? And let's start looking at diversifying the team. And I think I did a podcast about this last year. Diversifying the team where you find that one guy who's great at writing reports, and you find the one guy who's great at writing research, and you find the one guy who can maybe do vulnerabilities and understands network diagrams and understands how vulnerabilities impact all the systems in your environment. And I think if we transition that way and we start going that direction, we're going to get better as a whole from an OSINT community. I think also I would love to see this happen over the next couple of years, where OSINT gets a seat at the board of directors table, whether at the C-suite level. Intelligence in itself gets a seat at the C-suite level. Mm-hmm. If you aren't doing that, I think you're missing out on a big, big chunk of data and how to help you. Because the intelligence team can give you more than just cyber intelligence. Cyber intelligence can encompass everything, to include social media research and physical threats and then again that open source stuff. So really, that's what I would hope to see over the next year. I think we're still going to be stuck in neutral in the OSINT community as far as where we go from here, right? I think it's going to take a huge paradigm shift at the leadership level to understand that you got to start looking at open source intelligence. You've got to start bringing these people in and giving them leadership positions on that stuff, right? Like, that's what I'd like to see and what I'd hope to see. But I think until something major happens again and we have somebody in the intelligence community saying, look, had you had intelligence, you would have known about this, because as a freelance intel guy, I knew about this 4 weeks ago and could have told you, and you could have stopped it, right? Like, that's the big hit we need to have. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And I think that there are some major, intelligence C-suite roles that are starting to pop up. The value of intelligence is being recognized more and more, even though it's a slow climb. But I think the more value we can show that intelligence has for the business overall, mm-hmm. Then hopefully there'll be that seat eventually. That does sound wonderful.
It goes back to this, right? Anybody who's served in the military probably knows this already. Traditionally speaking, if you read the way everything's written in the military, intel drives operations. If the commercial, the business sector could follow that, mm-hmm. think how better it would be. Now, anybody who's been in the military also knows that that's not the actual case. Ops drives intel when it gets down to it in the military, but it's supposed to be intel driving operations. And so if we look at it from that perspective on the commercial sector and in the business sections, think how much better it would be if you had intel driving how we fix things or how we look at stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, driving, making informed decisions about things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. So that is it for the audience today here on Threat Intelligence. So thanks everybody for listening. Again, Adam Huenke, thank you.
You're very welcome. It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.